You want a war? You're gonna get one.
Forget the lies, the money. We're in this together and through it all. They said that nothing's forever, and they refuse to see the change in me. Why won't they wake up? Come on, come on, come on. Let's get it out. Move to the music, play that fucking music. Live through my music, yeah.
Welcome back to Reliving the War, and welcome to the 7th of October 1996. WWF Raw and WCW Nitro are on TV tonight. Nitro is live from Savannah, Georgia, while the WWF are putting on a tape show from Hershey, Pennsylvania. We're going to compare both shows and see who had the better matches and segments, but before we do, let's take a look at the first 60 minutes of WCW Nitro. Tony and Larry recapped the end of last week's Nitro where Miss Elizabeth bumped into Randy Savage. It was heavily implied that Miss Elizabeth had signed a contract with the New World Order, but now she wants no part of it. We then get a recap of WCW Saturday Night where Harlem Heat managed to reclaim the WCW Tag Team titles from Public Enemy, and so balance has been restored. That balance is then threatened when Public Enemy get a rematch on Nitro against Booker T and Stevie Ray. But thanks to the incompetence of Nick Patrick and thanks to a steel chair, Harlem Heat successfully defended the tag belts. The last spot where Booker came down on the chair looked pretty good. During the match, the NWO appeared in the crowd and the Outsiders announced that they're coming after the tag titles at Halloween Havoc. We also saw Elizabeth looking for Randy Savage, but he wasn't in his dressing room. A limousine pulls up to the arena and out walks the guy who didn't sing with My Baby Tonight, Jeff Jarrett. He's got some nerve showing up when everyone knows he's a no-good fraud with zero singing talent. The fucking swine. We go back to WCW Saturday Night where Nick Patrick announces he's pushing for a $1 million fine against Randy Savage. Patrick's lawyers say that Nick has a very good case, and Patrick says that WCW should get on his side because a certain announcer who was stirring up trouble and throwing around accusations isn't around anymore. This was in reference to Mean Gene Okerlund. Diamond Dallas Page got another win this week. This time it was Jim Powers who fell victim to the Diamond Cutter. During the match, we saw some pre-recorded comments from DDP, and it's confirmed here that Page will wrestle Eddie Guerrero at Halloween Havoc. Dallas called Eddie Burrito Boy during this promo. Liz couldn't find Randy Savage because the Macho Man was busy hanging out with Jason Keller, driver of the Slim Jim racing car. Randy wants to know how well the NWO car done in the Charlotte Speedway. And, well, have a look. Little Slim Jim boy Jason Keller takes great delight in Kyle Petty crashing the NWO car, and Jason says the Slim Jim car will be back and they'll do even better next time. Jason didn't win, but he did finish the race. Liz then shows up. She wants to explain what happened last week, but Savage doesn't want to hear it, and the Macho Man leaves with Slim Jim Jason. High Voltage versus the Faces of Fear was a short match. Meng The Barbarian got the win with a catapult into a big boot. Kenny Chaos and Robbie Rage may be high in voltage, but they aren't high on the Meng Manly meter. Chris Benoit and Steve McMichael watched the match from the entranceway. Up next we have Glacier versus Mike Weiner, like Mike Enos. Apparently it's pronounced Mike Winner, but Mike wasn't much of a winner when Sub-Zero nearly kicked his head off. Gonna admit it here, Glacier was fun to watch. It was a break from the usual stuff, and his offensive style that was learned from Grandmaster Sensei in Kyoto, Japan was very unique. And that wraps up the first 60 minutes of Nitro. It was pretty good, nothing to complain about really, so Nitro gets the unopposed point this week. Raw opens up with a hype video. We're going to see Goldust versus Sycho Sid in our main event, and the real Jesse James is going to bury Jeff Jarrett later on in a pre-taped interview. Jim Ross is not at the commentary table for our opening match because he's accompanying the fake Diesel to the ring for our opening contest. The WWF presents Diesel versus Marc Mero, while Jeff Jarrett does battle with Hugh Morrus on Nitro. The fake Diesel then, you should take the time to listen to Jim Cornette talking about how he trained Glenn Jacobs to work just like Kevin Nash. Let's just say the training wasn't very in-depth. The very first Diesel move that Glenn does here is the hair flick. He then immediately pulls off a knee strike. The back elbows in the corner get followed up with a running clothesline. And it's around this point where Glenn realizes he's used up nearly all of his moves. He hasn't got much left. Mero begins fighting back and Diesel gets drop-kicked out of the ring. The Wild Man then dives over the top rope, landing on Diesel. And then he lands a splash from the apron back into the ring. Good stuff here from Mero. Diesel comes back, lifting Mero in the air and dropping him across the top rope. Diesel then begins attacking Mero on the ropes as Kevin Kelly announces that Jim Ross is being investigated by WWF officials. According to Vince McMahon this past week on the Live Wire show, Jim doesn't seem to care all that much. Glenn then hits another signature Diesel move, the Big Boot. Diesel hits a few knee strikes in the corner, and then we see the fake Razor Ramon via split screen. When asked what he thinks about Diesel's performance so far, Razor says this.
Big Daddy Cool is doing alright, Chico.
Oh, that's rough, isn't it? Razor says he wants to get a closer look at the action, and back in the ring, an ambitious pin attempt by Mero nearly gets botched. Diesel fires back with a clothesline and a body slam, and as Mero begins fighting back, Razor Ramon walks down to the ring. After Diesel gets clotheslined over the top rope, the Wild Man performs his somersault senton on Razor Ramon. Poor Razor was just minding his own business, and here's this fucking Wild Man coming at him. And this leads to the bad guy jumping into the ring, and the referee calls for the bell. A beatdown on Marc Mero follows, and Razor begins completely missing his punches. Have a look. Diesel hits a jackknife and Sable screams for help. Not the best way to start off an episode of Monday Night Raw. After the bout, we see The Undertaker digging Mankind's grave. His work is nearly complete, and The Undertaker says all he has to do now is bury Mankind and in your house. Jeff Jarrett versus Hugh Morrus then on Nitro. Remember, the WWF are going to spend a little time burying Jeff on Raw very, very soon. The commentary team speculate that Jarrett could be part of the New World Order as our match gets underway. Hugh Morrus tries to attack Jeff in the corner, but Jarrett dodges the attack and he performs the Jackie Fargo strut. I'm confused here, is Jeff supposed to be a heel or is he supposed to be a babyface? A hip toss from Jarrett leads to another strut, and the original Double J then sits on the top rope while telling fans at home that this is just too easy. Yeah, he's acting like a total heel here. A drop toe hold from Jarrett and another strut, and I'm already fucking tired of seeing it. And when Hugh Morrus nails Jarrett with a clothesline, the audience pops. They're cheering for a Dungeon of Doom member because he just destroyed Jeff Jarrett. Brilliant. Morrus runs into Jeff in the corner and he mocks the strut. Jarrett then misses an enziguri, but he manages to come back with an atomic drop followed by a clothesline. The audience boos. Bischoff is convinced that Jarrett is part of the New World Order as Jeff takes the lead again. Another strut from Double J, and if the purpose of this was to get under my skin, then it's fucking working really, really well. Good job, Jeff. Don't know if this was a swinging neckbreaker or a DDT attempt, but Morrus goes down anyway. Jarrett follows up with a nice dropkick, but Morrus gets his foot on the ropes during the pin attempt. Hugh Morrus comes back with a power slam and he signals for the end. Morrus then goes for a diving leg drop, but he misses his target. There's a ton of impact here, and I'm sure Hugh wasn't laughing after breaking his ass in 4 different places here. Jeff takes this opportunity to apply a figure 4 and it's all over. Jarrett wins via submission. 2 painfully average matches here and nothing sticks out. Mero's athleticism was maybe the highlight of the Raw match, while Hugh Morrus getting cheered on Nitro was kinda funny. But no points for either show, nothing special at all. Jeff Jarrett gets interviewed afterwards. Tony Schiavone wants to know if Jeff is in with the New World Order, but Jarrett reveals that he wants nothing to do with the NWO. Jarrett talks about Hulk Hogan saying he's bigger than the sport of professional wrestling, and Jarrett takes exception to that because his dad was a promoter and Hogan sure didn't put food on the table at the Jarrett household. The crowd chant NWO as Double J tells Hulk Hogan to stick it. So Double J is not a member of the New World Order. Thank God for that. The Renegade versus Arn Anderson is up next on Nitro, while the WWF presents the New Rockers versus the Smoking Guns. Sid cuts a quick backstage promo during the New Rockers entrance. He says Goldust will find out later that Sid is the master and ruler of the world. And we also get a short Mr. Perfect highlight video showing off Hennig's abilities to do everything absolutely perfectly. Remember, Hunter Hearst Helmsley and Mr. Perfect are gearing up for a match in 2 weeks' time. A pre-recorded interview is also shown with Billy and Bart Gunn. Bart is focused on winning the tag titles back at Buried Alive, while Billy seems more concerned about getting Sonny back as a manager. Billy Gunn screams at the audience when they start chanting for Sonny. Sonny phones into Raw as the match gets underway, and she says she might consider going back to the Smoking Guns if they can reclaim the tag team titles. Leif Cassidy and Billy Gunn start things off. Billy is acting extremely cocky after taking Cassidy down. Cassidy gets back up and he completely out-wrestles Billy. This leads to Billy smacking Cassidy across the face, and the Rocker returns the favour. The two go back and forth a little, but Billy gets an unfair advantage after performing a rake to the face. Again, I'm confused about who we're supposed to cheer for here. The two competitors punch each other at the same time before tagging out. We have Bart and Marty now. Marty counters a press slam with a pin attempt, but he only gets 2. Marty counters another slam with an inside cradle, but again, only 2. Bart then takes some time to punish Marty, but for the 3rd time, Marty counters Bart's offense with a pin attempt. This time, it was a backslide. Bart looks at Marty as if to say, I'm going to completely fuck you up for that. And he goes over to Billy for some advice. Billy doesn't give advice, but instead he tags himself in. When Billy manages to pretty easily take out Marty Jannetty, he looks straight at Bart as if to say, see, that's how it's done. Bart comes back in, Marty slaps him across the face, and when Bart Gunn gives chase on the outside, Leif Cassidy hits a surprise clothesline. Back inside the ring, Marty hits a jumping back elbow, and the commentators aren't paying attention to this match at all. They're talking about Jim Ross and his office job that was just made public 2 weeks ago. Leif gets tagged in and Bart gets destroyed. Marty comes back in and Bart has to rely on Billy getting in a cheap shot. So far, Bart Gunn has looked very incompetent in this matchup. Billy comes back in and the Smoking Guns begin working together. We see some double team offense from Billy and Bart, but Billy then gets sent over the top rope. Eventually, we get to a hot tag scenario and Leif Cassidy cleans house. But the match comes to an end when the Smoking Guns hit the Sidewinder for the pinfall win. Immediately after securing the victory, Billy Gunn doesn't celebrate with Bart. It seems that Bart is all about winning matches, whereas Billy is a bit obsessed with their former manager. All in all, I enjoyed this match. There was a story being played out in the ring, and as far as the moves went, everything was on point. AA versus the Renegade then. Anderson mocks the Renegade with a few jumping jacks after performing a hammerlock. Seems like the Enforcer is in good form tonight, folks. A shoulder block and leapfrog sequence ends with Anderson going for a piledriver, but Renegade counters with a back body drop followed by a body slam. AA decides to take a breather on the outside before resuming the match. Renegade makes the mistake of going after the Horseman on the outside, resulting in Anderson getting back inside the ropes and taking advantage when his opponent tries to do the same. Anderson then takes control of the match by attacking Renegade while he's down. We see a knee drop and Anderson begins raking his opponent's face at the ropes. The Enforcer has masterfully dictated the pace of this bout, and even the commentary team talk about how Anderson has turned this into his kind of wrestling match. Renegade tries to surprise Anderson with a sunset flip, but the crowd pops when Anderson punches his opponent to escape. Even Woman thinks this is easy work as the Enforcer brings Renegade down with a chin lock. The two men get to their feet and Anderson once again outsmarts his opponent and Renegade goes down. We've got these three maniacs in the audience watching themselves on the big screen while pretending to hit each other. And Anderson is now taking no prisoners by choking his opponent on the mat. A wrist lock next from Arn Anderson and the crowd begins chanting for the DDT.
Try to intimidate. I got news for you.
Anderson applies an armbar next and all of Anderson's attacks are focused around the arm. This is absolute domination from AA, the most dominant he's been in a match since the beginning of Reliving the War. The Renegade gets his knees up when Arn tries a Vader bomb and the babyface tries to build up a little momentum. AA takes a few clotheslines and the Renegade performs a Muda cartwheel back elbow, but the audience just isn't getting behind the comeback. Renegade goes for the same move again, but the Enforcer has it scouted. Anderson signals for the DDT and the crowd get on their feet. The Enforcer gives them what they want to see and it's all over. Anderson wins via pinfall. It was good to see AA dominate an opponent, even if it is easy to feel sorry for the Renegade. We have seen Anderson take beating after beating on WCW Nitro, but not here. Arn destroyed the opposition and the fans absolutely loved it. Still, the point goes to Raw. The tag team match had a better story throughout. Renegade vs Anderson was great for AA fans, but if I had to pick one match over the other, I'd pick the Raw tag team match. Lex Luger runs down when Anderson won't stop attacking the Renegade. Anderson and woman escape while Lex invites the Enforcer to come back into the ring. Lex Luger takes on Squire Dave Taylor next on Nitro, while the WWF presents a few promos featuring Jesse James, Jim Cornette and Vader. So the real Double J Jesse James is set here with absolute legend Jim Johnson, and he's singing With My Baby Tonight. Todd Pettengill is narrating this segment, and he says that Jeff Jarrett disappeared from the World Wrestling Federation when he learned about potentially being exposed as a fraud. Pettengill says Jarrett's whole singing career has been a hoax. No shit. And the real Double J has come forward to talk about Jeff Jarrett. Jesse James says that he doesn't hate Jarrett, it was thanks to Jeff that the Road Dogg was able to appear on TV and all that nonsense. But Jesse says that he brought Jeff's career to the next level thanks to the My Baby Tonight stuff at In Your House 2. James says Jarrett is not the world's best entertainer, he's not even close to being a good entertainer. He can't dance and he can't sing. James says that Jeff felt great after lip-syncing the song, and James takes responsibility for accidentally costing Jarrett the IC title later in the evening against Shawn Michaels. And I'm pretty sure the WWF only replayed this so they could show Shawn Michaels beating up a WCW guy. But James says if Jarrett comes back to the WWF one day, he's welcome to carry James's bags and drive his Lincoln Town car from city to city. James then calls Jarrett the Road Dogg. As Pettengill tells us, more details of this scandal will be revealed next week. Vader and Jim Cornette then come to the ring, and Cornette implies that Jim Ross had helped the duo in some way or form. It's not made clear, but Cornette thanks Jim for his help, whatever that help may be. We see some clips from Raw last week when Vader pinned Shawn Michaels, and Jim Ross announces that the Sycho Sid vs Vader match at Buried Alive will now be a #1 contendership match. Cornette is pissed off, and rightfully so. Cornette says Vader pinned Shawn at International Incident, he beat him twice at SummerSlam, and he also beat him last week on Raw. Vader should not have to wrestle Sid to get another one-on-one shot at HBK's WWF title. Cornette says the WWF are protecting Shawn Michaels. HBK is on all the merchandise and all the magazines, he was even on Playgirl magazine. And Cornette says Vader would never do any of that stuff because he's a big bad man. Just imagine Vader in Playgirl magazine. Ooh. Cornette says that Sid stole the powerbomb from Vader, but that doesn't matter. Sid will find himself in his own personal hell at Buried Alive, and Vader will get what's rightfully his at the 1996 Survivor Series, the WWF Championship. Good stuff here. You always feel like Jim Cornette was talking from the heart during these promos, and knowing what we now know about Cornette's feelings towards Vader and Michaels in 1996, he really did mean a lot of what he said here. Jim felt that Vader should have been at the top, he shouldn't have had his push squandered, and the WWF really shouldn't have been working so hard to appease Shawn Michaels. Squire Dave Taylor hits Jeeves with a European uppercut during his entrance. Mike Tenay talks about how Bobby Eaton has left the Blue Bloods due to how Taylor treats other members of the faction. But the question is, where does TV champion Steve Regal stand in all this? Regal has been touring the world defending the television title apparently, so we'll have to wait until he gets back. Luger brings Taylor to the corner and he gives a clean break, not once, but twice. Lex goes on to dominate his opponent while also talking to us via split screen, the wonders of television. Lex challenges Arn Anderson to a match at Halloween Havoc, and Luger also says he wants to regain his TV title. He can't take on Steve Regal, so he's gonna take it out on Dave Taylor. Luger manages to bring Taylor down with a backslide, and when Dave kicks out, Luger takes a little punishment in the corner, but it doesn't last too long. Lex hits a clothesline at the opposite corner and a big forearm sends Taylor to the mat. Lex runs into Taylor, but a big boot to the mouth floors the total package. Dave then goes for a middle rope elbow drop, but Lex moves out of the way. Luger then signals for the torture rack, and that's it. Lex Luger wins via submission. I'm giving the point to Raw here. The Jesse James stuff was absolutely laughable, but Cornette's promo was fantastic. The Nitro bout felt like a filler match and nothing more. Arn Anderson attacks Luger after the bout, trying to get some kind of story on the go for their Halloween Havoc match. Chris Benoit versus Rick Steiner is up next on Nitro. WWF Raw presents Aldo Montoya versus the Sultan, and I do wonder who's going to win this point. The Sultan slams Montoya hard to the mat, and when Montoya tries to come at his opponent, he gets thrown into the corner with ease. Bob Backlund is providing commentary, and he says he can't hear without his glasses on as Montoya and Sultan go through the giant routine. Aldo can't bring the Sultan down, and he even tries a sunset flip, but that doesn't get him anywhere. And we miss a belly-to-belly suplex because the cameras were too focused on Backlund's sunglasses. The Sultan continues to destroy Aldo as the commentary team try to understand why Backlund's wearing sunglasses, when Lawler tries to put Backlund over by saying he's wearing glasses because his future is so bright. Backlund snaps back saying no, that's not the reason why. It's the WWF who made him wear glasses so he wouldn't scrutinise the fans and tell them not to do drugs. I don't know. Just look at Jerry Lawler trying his best not to laugh.
For what reason would you be wearing sunglasses?
Because the people, the plebeians, don't like.
Backlund shows that he's one step ahead by flipping up the shades on his glasses. You got us there, Bob. Whatever shall we do? Sultan is still absolutely wrecking Montoya in the ring. Aldo gets launched into the turnbuckles hard, and Sultan takes some time to pose to the hard camera. Montoya then gets launched to the opposite corner, and he gets hit with a side suplex. And the match comes to an end with the Sultan locking in the camel clutch. What can I say? It was absolutely shit. Mr. Backlund takes great delight in the Sultan tossing Montoya out of the ring as our segment comes to an end. To be fair, Backlund was the best thing about this match. Steiner vs Benoit is a rematch from last week. I'm looking forward to this one as their previous match was good, albeit a little short. It's announced here that Scott Steiner has suffered a back injury, but he's still going to stand in Rick's corner for this matchup. Apparently, Scott needs surgery. Big Steve McMichael and Deborah are going to stand with Chris Benoit tonight. Mongo distracts Rick, and this allows Benoit to take the early advantage. We see a repeat spot from last week when Steiner grabs Benoit out of a leapfrog, but I could watch this stuff on repeat. Mongo tries to throw Rick off his game, but Benoit runs into a stiff clothesline. The crowd are going nuts at this point, and Rick is looking really good. The two men trade blows as Bischoff reveals that WCW is going on another tour of Japan, and because Scott Steiner is injured, Rick is scheduled to team up with the Great Muta. That sounds interesting. A belly-to-belly suplex only gets Rick a 2 count. Scott looks on as his brother kicks Benoit in the corner before bringing it down to the mat. Benoit tries his best to fight back when both men get to their feet, but a German suplex puts the crippler right back down. This gets another huge ovation from the audience, but Benoit gets his foot on the ropes when Rick tries to end the match. We come back from commercial break and Benoit hits a hard chop in the corner. The two men again start trading blows, but Benoit has managed to take the lead and Steiner runs into a back elbow. Scott gets frustrated with Nick Patrick's officiating, although he didn't do anything wrong from what I see, and Patrick threatens to disqualify Rick. Benoit then hits a snap suplex, but he only gets a 2 count. We then go backstage where the NWO's limo is seen. It looks a lot like Jeff Jarrett's limo, doesn't it? Bischoff says we've been relatively NWO free all night with the exception of the Outsiders challenging Harlem Heat, but it looks like Hogan and the Giant have just shown up to do some damage. Benoit has a chin lock applied in the ring. He hits a body slam followed by an elbow drop, but he still can't end the match. Benoit hits a side suplex before applying another chin lock. Careful there, Chris. Scott cheers his brother on from the apron and Rick manages to come back with a jumping clothesline. These two just haven't stopped since the opening bell. Benoit digs deep into his offensive playbook and 3 strikes and you're out, pal.
Chris Benoit chinlock. What a bitch.
So much for being a master of technical wrestling. A body slam from Benoit gets followed up with a diving headbutt. Steiner kicks out at 2. Benoit goes upstairs one more time, and Steiner manages to grab his opponent and deliver a belly-to-belly suplex. Steiner hits a second rope bulldog, Benoit kicks out, and Scott Steiner jumps on the apron to complain to Nick Patrick. Deborah then distracts the referee and Mongo tries to pass his magical briefcase to Benoit, but Scott Steiner puts an end to that. And then I have no words for this next part, just watch. Steiner hits Benoit with the briefcase to get the win. An excellent match from WCW Nitro here. Go out of your way to watch this one. Nitro gets the point. WCW Nitro ends with Randy Savage vs Ric Flair, while the WWF presents Goldust vs Sycho Sid. The WWF show a brief clip of Mankind trying to dig a grave for The Undertaker, but he's got some serious anxiety about being buried alive. Paul Bearer calms Mankind with the urn. Goldust vs Sid feels a little predictable, but again, and I've said this a few times, it's remarkable how much the fans have gotten behind Sycho Sid, and it really feels like it's all out of nowhere. Goldust blindsides his opponent to start this one off, and Sid falls to the mat after taking a clothesline. The bizarre one was doing absolutely fine until he tried to bring Sid's head to his dick, and this leads to Sid hitting a bad looking atomic drop followed by a good looking clothesline. Sid then goes for a powerbomb to end this one early, but Goldust escapes, and then Shawn Michaels phones into Raw. Shawn doesn't care who he faces at Survivor Series because both Sid and Vader are big dudes. There's no advantage or disadvantages here for the Heartbreak Kid. Goldust lays in multiple strikes to Sid, but the big man won't go down. Sid hits a slap combo on Goldust, but his follow-up backdrop gets countered. Jim Cornette then walks down to the commentary desk to get a closer look. Goldust hits a power slam, but Sid kicks out at 2. And then, when we come back from commercial break, Sid hits a choke slam. Jim Cornette reiterates that Vader should not need to face Sycho Sid at Buried Alive as our match comes to an end. Sid wins with a power bomb. Vader comes down to attack Sid afterwards. Sid takes a top rope splash, but the big man no-sells it, and we get this glorious image right here. The show comes to an end with Vader taking a chokeslam and Jim Cornette running away. Not a bad main event, but nothing great either. It was centered around Sid, and it played to Sid's strengths, which meant it was maybe a little too short. Randy Savage comes out for his match with Ric Flair, but Ric doesn't make it down to the ring, so we don't even have a match to end Nitro this week. Hogan and the Nasty Boys are seen talking backstage. Hogan tells Knobs and Sags to watch his back. Flair's music plays in the arena, but Ric is nowhere to be seen. The NWO have jumped the Nature Boy backstage, and now Savage is in a bad spot. He's all alone in the ring. Vincent is doing his absolute best to get some TV time while the NWO take care of Flair. Elizabeth is seen looking pretty scared, and the Giant begins going after Liz. Savage tries to rescue his ex-wife, but Hogan blindsides the Macho Man, and so the beating begins. Hogan chokes Savage with a chair, and when Miss Elizabeth tries to stop the Hulkster, Hogan puts his hands on her and he tells the Giant to take care of Savage. Giant tries to carry Savage up the steel steps, but he slips. He slips and Savage falls down. I'm sure Big Paul White got an earful backstage when Nitro went off the air for this one. And so Giant just throws Macho over the top rope. Hulk Hogan makes Liz watch the destruction of Randy Savage. Hulk wants to do it all by himself, and so the Giant wraps his sweaty hand around Elizabeth's face, and Savage takes a few leg drops. The ring begins filling up with garbage, and the Hulkster sprays an outline of Savage's defeated body. It's a crime scene here on Monday Nitro. The Outsiders come down to the ring as Hulk Hogan announces that he owns Miss Elizabeth. Savage isn't going to make it to Halloween Havoc, and Nitro ends with a fucking Hollywood Hogan monster truck coming out to wreck the commentary table. This was brilliant. We don't see the destruction though. The engine revs up as the show fades to black. Gonna have to go with Nitro for the last point. It was just way more exciting to watch. Nitro just about wins this week's Reliving the War, and it really boils down to Nitro having that unopposed 60 minutes. Both shows were better than last week's though, and if you're going to watch any match from this week's episodes of Raw and Nitro, I can't recommend the Rick Steiner vs Chris Benoit match enough. Nitro now leads our scoreboard with 28 points, Raw has to win 10 weeks in order to catch up, and we're still stuck with 6 ties. In the television ratings, Nitro wins with a 3.5 over Raw's 2.1. Wrestling fans simply prefer WCW Nitro during this time period. Shawn Michaels vs Steve Austin happens next week on Raw. And elsewhere on the show, Mr. Perfect gets ready for his WWF comeback. Over on Nitro, Harlem Heat are going to try to break the Meng Manly meter when they step into the ring with the Faces of Fear, and Eddie Guerrero is also back in action. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Reliving the War, and I hope to see you again next week. Take care.